Good morning, everybody. How is it going? We made it to Wednesday. I put a video up on the channel this morning and about shit a brick. I was like, damn, it's already March 8th. Like we're like halfway through the month almost. Crazy. Who did I miss? I was in here chatting. I missed Mary Thomas. I missed Connie. Connie's birthday was yesterday. She snuck that past us. Hey, Gina. Hey, Red's Paradise. What a cool name. What does Red's Paradise mean? Rowena. Hey, Rowena, did you get my email? I emailed you back yesterday. Jane Doe said, time is flying by. It certainly is. I don't think time's really flying by for Alex. He doesn't have his peels, and he doesn't have a daily entertainment with a trial going on. I have a feeling that the days aren't clicking away for him like they are us. He's not very productive in there. I don't know, maybe he has some games going on, meat sticks and ramen, Pop-Tarts. So the video I put up this morning was about his brother Randy. We're going to look at that. I have a lot of comments to go through. Going to talk about the appeals. There's probably going to be more than one. Because I'm sure if the trial was anything to judge it by, he's definitely gonna continue fighting. He didn't pay $600,000 for nothing. Good morning, Izzy. How are you, hun? Dina said he's collecting honey buns. By now, he's probably somebody else's honey bun up in the jail. They love to wrestle each other in the jail, if you know what I mean. So, before we get to it, I'm going to get to the comments. Going to be bringing up John. He was on yesterday, but he's going to talk to us about the whole appeals process, what he thinks about it. And before anybody gets upset, I'm going to say right now that because we're talking about the appeals, doesn't mean that we're advocating for him to get out or that he will get out. I really think in situations like this, good overcomes, good wins. You better believe it. Hang on, I already missed a comment. How did I do that? I did not slow the chat down. That's 100% on me. Bob just made it in. Bob said playing ramen, poker, and smoking spinach cigarettes. What a life. What a life he's got there, Bob. How did you learn about that, Bob? How did you learn about spinach cigarettes? I'm dying to know. Oh, Dina just brought up Netflix. Does anybody know who is getting paid for the Netflix? Who gets paid for the HBO? Who gets paid for all of this? I know there's something on Hulu. Who would get the royalties from that? I remember, great show, by the way, if you can stomach it, when Netflix, Ryan Murphy, Evan Peters, I think his name is, when they did the Netflix series about Dahmer, and so many people were pissed off that Dahmer's victims, the families, didn't see a dime of it. Who gets the money? Does just Netflix get all that and just give everybody an allowance? I don't know. Speaking of allowance, I just got mine. Thank you, Chloe, for the super sticker. Thank you, thank you. I did put in chat this morning. Don't forget, March is for members. Check the members tab when you think about it. On the channel, only members can see it. Got a lot of stuff going on for you guys this month. Let's get to the comments. All right, this one. I cannot pronounce the name. It's a bunch of symbols that says, Brooks, did you hear that Alex has cancer and that's the reason they shaved his head? I did not, but I know where it came from. Jennifer Coffendaffer said on her Twitter, she said, oh my goodness, Alex Murdaugh with a shaved head. She said, I know I'm a girl, so hair means more. But I recall when a SWAT mate got cancer and lost his hair. Not an easy thing. Thanks to all who set the why straight. Well, that's all she said. Alex did not suddenly get cancer when he received 2 life sentences, okay? She needs to take this tweet down and maybe just get off Twitter altogether. Because this is about the 500th time I've had to put a tweet up of hers, and people believe it. I get it. No shame in your game. I get bringing it up. It has nothing to do with that. His ass isn't sick. He's too freaking evil to get cancer. Hell no. It is about lice. Hang on, let me find the other tweet. I thought I had it up here. Well, I guess I didn't put it up. It's about lice. They shave their head before they put them with their new friends, their new SWAT mates, if you know what I mean, to control the lice. That's the reason his ass is bald. He does not have cancer. He does not have cancer. We don't want to wish cancer on anybody, but I don't think we're going to come unglued if he did have cancer. But he does not. So forget that nonsense. Mama She 13, thank you for the reminder and thank you for the super sticker. Today is International Women's Day. What are we going to do to celebrate? We should do a members live later this afternoon. I love it. I love it. Did not know there was such a thing. I had no idea. If it wasn't for No Pants Bob G, I really wouldn't know about half of these holidays. Bob reminds me every day on his Facebook what national day it is. It was National Cheese Puff Day one day. One day it was National Tortilla Day, National Frozen Food Day or something. But today is National Women's Day. I think we need to figure out something to do. I think we do. We got to celebrate this up. All right, back to the comments. Deanie Mac, let me put my glasses on. Hello, JC. How you doing? New Zealand Mysteries. Hang on. I love this. New Zealand Mysteries said it was yesterday for me. I have a feeling that has to do with our time difference. That's awesome. Welcome, by the way. I see a lot of new names. Make sure you set that reminder. You know when we go live. It's not always just 9 a.m. Central Time. Sometimes I get all froggy and I'll go live at 3 or 4 in the afternoon. You know you're not going to see me live after 7 o'clock because my ass is probably asleep. Deanie Mac said, there's no way the law firm didn't know about the money. It was laundered through their books until the fake Forge account was created. And Jeannie testified that they paid year-end bonuses based on the settlements each attorney generated. And she put all in capitals. You can bet that they all knew how much to expect from everybody's cases. How could they not catch the fact that the money wasn't paid to clients? That crime syndicate is still operating, in my opinion, and they're happy to throw Alex to the wolves as if he was the only one stealing. Shaking my head, she said. I love this comment. One of the first things I said when I heard about the financial crimes and the skimming the settlements, and I said it when we were doing our watch parties, is this happens every day in personal injury offices. You can't tell me that this went on for all that time and nobody knew. Do you think maybe because of his last name, who he is, they said, don't worry about that. But when he was on national news every freaking morning, they were like, they're coming for us. They're coming for us. His brother spoke to the New York Times yesterday. I put a video on the channel this morning where WSAV in Savannah talked about it. He is suing his brother for $75,000. That's a drop in a bucket. That's a drop in the bucket. He says he's trying to restore the family name. Let me ask you guys this before I play the video and go through the other comments. Do you think the family name can be restored? Or do you think that all of it that's out now is always going to be looming over them? He also said that he doesn't believe that, I can't say that he didn't say he doesn't believe it. He thinks that Alex knows more. He has a hard time believing that he's the murderer. Well, you got to take that up with the jury. He knows how it goes around here.
News 3's Andrew Davis in the Low Country newsroom with Randy Murdaugh's latest admissions.
Well, Randy Murdaugh says he's now taking extra steps to make sure people don't confuse his legal practice with his brother's illegal ways. In an interview with the New York Times, Randy opens up about the Alec he knew and what he thinks of him now.
I didn't shoot my wife or my son anytime.
Alec Murdaugh was defiant on the stand. He was innocent. The jury didn't believe him, and his own brother is still not sure. In the New York Times article, Randy Murdaugh says he still did not know if Alec killed Maggie and Paul Murdaugh, but he finds it impossible to picture Alec as a violent murderer. Randy added that he knows more than what he's saying, and he's not telling the truth, in my opinion, about everything there. Randy was not there for the verdict or sentencing of his brother, a man who he now calls a serial liar and a thief. The one thing.
A serial liar and a thief. Never mind that the murders are his sister-in-law, which, from what I'm understanding, there's not a lot of love lost between Randy and Maggie, or John Marvin and Maggie, or Lynn and Maggie, but still, you can't deny she was murdered. Did anyone find it odd that Randy wasn't at the sentencing? So he says Alex is a serial liar. Well, we knew that part.
Thing that especially bothered him was while Randy made calls to everyone, searching for clues into who may have done this, Alec never did. Its confusion echoed by Maggie's sister on the stand.
I said, Alec, do you have any idea who's done this? I said, we have got to find out who could do this. And he said that he did not know who it was, but he felt like whoever did it had thought about it for a really long time.
Randy says the first time he knew Alec was stealing money was when he and another partner confronted him, and he promised to never lie to him again.
And you hid from them you were stealing client money, did you not?
Oh, I never, they didn't know anything about that.
But Alec broke that promise in just 24 hours, asking him for a loan, $75,000 that Randy now is suing Alec to get back. He's not spoken to his brother in almost a year, and now says he works to get his good name and the family's good name back, saying he continues to, quote, do things the right way. I always have. Now, the Murdaugh family, the article says, is now focused on helping Buster, who has now lost everything and everyone in his immediate circle. And while he hoped that after the trial he could stop thinking about the case, he finishes with the simple fact that that has not been the case. Andrew.
Okay, denial is a real thing. Maybe in Randy's mind, it doesn't seem or look as bad if Alex just knew about it, or Alex hired it done, or I don't know. I don't know. It seemed pretty cold and calculating to me. And so that's all I got with that. It would be really hard to grapple with the fact that your brother took out his wife and your nephew. Betsy Jane said if he didn't do it, then how did he know what time to lie about? She said, wow, that's deep. Betsy's referring to the video I put on the channel yesterday that came from the jurors. One in particular, young kid that goes to school at Clemson. He might have graduated from there. I don't know if he's currently a student or not. I don't know. But anyway, what he said yesterday, he said, how did he know what time to lie about? That's what sealed the deal for him. Let's look at that real quick.
Was the single most significant piece of evidence that convinced you beyond a shadow of a doubt that he did it?
You know, I think it was a common factor. I think a lot of people have said the kennel video, it's something that he had lied about. It's something that was interesting because if he didn't do it, how did he know what time to lie about not being there? And, you know, it came from Paul. Paul has no reason to lie, you know, and I just think that it's important that we were able to get that piece of evidence from someone that was a victim.
I always found it interesting that if you really step back and think about it, that, you know, Paul from the grave helped convict his father.
Yes.
Because had it not been for that kennel video, what do you think?
I think it probably would have been a hung jury had not been for that video. But it's like he spoke from the grave.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Amy, was that for you? Was it also the kennel video? Hearing Alex's voice on that video that made all the difference?
Yes, and then him admitting that he lied. Yeah.
Yeah, what a statement to make. Makes you feel really bad for the jurors that they had to give up all of that time of their day, their daily life, their friends, their work, you name it. And it, for some of them, it was the video. Like he said, how did he know what time to lie about? Tracy said, old Papa got him in the end. I bet when he heard about that video, he was spitting mad. Okay, Adjusted Fate, I can't talk today, left me a comment. Now, she is a friend of the channel's. She has followed many, many cases. I don't know if she's in here right now listening. But I was just going to send her an email and go through the comment. But so many of you saw the comment and said, are you going to address this? So I'm going to address it on here. Why not? I had to break it up a little bit, and I'm not going through the whole thing because it is a long comment. It's a great comment, though. She said, good Lord, people, stop with this federal prison nonsense. You do not go to federal prison unless you're convicted on federal charges. She said, Brooks, you know I love you, girl, but this one is stuffed with misinformation. Talking about the show from Monday. Let me explain something. When I was growing up, you guys are going to love this story, and I'm sure most of you remember this. When we had to do book reports, we had to have a separate piece of paper called a bibliography to where we wrote down all our references, all our resources. We had to write down the book, the page, the whole 9 yards. So when I do a show, let's take Monday's show, for example, my bibliography is the articles I share with you guys, the news clips. So if there's misinformation, you got to blame them, not me. The rest of it would be conversation on panel, speculation, or when you hear us say, well, what I think, that's just my point of reference, if you know what I mean. Can't do too much about that. So anyway, where it came up, what I said about the federal charges, there aren't any, is because of the tax evasion. Last I heard, the IRS is federal. It is federal. Alex Murdaugh, the disgraced attorney accused of killing his wife and son, was indicted Friday. Now, this is from December 16th, 2022. Adding to the slew of charges he faces in the aftermath of their deaths more than a year ago. Prosecutors said Murdaugh, 54, made nearly $14 million as a lawyer over 9 years, but also stole nearly $7 million. Through tax returns from 2011 to 2019, the grand jury indictments shed a light on a man who made millions and evaded the Internal Revenue Service. So that's what we were saying. If the IRS is involved, the feds are involved, and the conversation was, old Alex probably has something up his sleeve in order to go to the Fed pen where it's nicer as opposed to hang out with the lowly state prisoners. She went on to say, Tinsley is not what set this off. Just don't tell him. She says it would smash his ego and open up old wounds from when he was denied a good old boy club card. Well, if that would hurt his feelings, I'm sorry. Tinsley doesn't need to worry about hanging around any of the people that he wanted to hang around with at one time, if that's even true. I don't know. He's in a different echelon now, and that is of a national figure that people respect and call a tiger. Now, this is in reference to what I said, and I still stand by it. I believe that the tipping point, what made the teeter-totter go way up in the air for Alex, was when Tinsley said, "We're not taking your shitty insurance settlement from the boat accident," and he sued him personally. When he was approached by not just Alex, but other attorneys, and they said, "You've crossed a line," he crossed it further. He did a motion to compel because he said, "I know he's not that broke." That is my opinion. I believe that there would be no murders if it wasn't for Alex being sued personally. He knew everything was about to come out. His financial crimes, Pawpaw getting in trouble criminally, he could navigate that. But losing everything else, that's my opinion, and I think that Mark Tinsley is a big part of that. This was shared in Discord today, and I couldn't stop laughing. Just Me put this up. This is from his Twitter. It says, Mark Tinsley at the Mark Tinsley. It says he follows you. Just Me, do you have a Twitter? This isn't from me. Describes him Dragon Slayer, 5-year-old forensic auditor and part-time provider of comedy, all the while being a tiger on your tail. Cracked me up. I thought that was hilarious. Okay, so we cleared up those things. Then it goes on to say Buster is not being looked at in the Smith case. They've already investigated him and moved on in another direction, according to a local South Carolina attorney who appeared on the STS podcast. How about we show Buster a little grace in his circumstance? Now, I've been seeing a lot of this lately about showing Buster grace. I don't know what the hell I could have said on Monday that erupted this. I'm not going to take it personal, though. As far as sled clearing Buster, I can't find anything on that. The last thing that I saw, this is from WTOC. This was 2 days ago, and they said SLED still hasn't officially said what the connection between Stephen Smith's case and the Murdaugh family is. Okay, so that was 2 days ago. That doesn't sound cleared to me. Doesn't sound clear to me. As far as Buster, I'm going to explain right now. I'm not hurting Buster's feelings. Nobody here's bothering Buster. I guarantee Buster doesn't watch this show. We have a Facebook group, which is private. The rule is scroll and roll. Buster's not in there. We have a Discord where we talk about everything between the weather to what we ate for breakfast or different cases. Buster's not in there. Buster's not in there. I hope he's not involved. I hope he's not involved. Stephen Smith's mother seems to think he is. And she's going to keep the name, she's going to keep it going. She is going to keep it going. So as far as cutting Buster any slack, he's got bigger fish to fry than anything that can be said on this channel or in my private Facebook group. This morning, just this morning, the first hour of the Today Show, as people are getting their coffee, brushing their teeth, heading out the door, was all about Buster. All about Buster. And they brought up Stephen Smith. They damn sure did. Not me. The Today Show did. Now, this came out yesterday. Buster Murdaugh and girlfriend call the sheriff's office after Ring camera shows suspicious vehicle outside home, claims they were being followed. I understand that the New York Post was looking in his blinds or something. Now, I'm not I'm not cool with the New York Post peeking in the windows. I'm not cool with people jumping out in front of him the other day as he was walking in to watch his dad get 2 life sentences. Shit, he's gonna go take a shower and he's gonna look up and Brian Enton's gonna be handing him the soap soon. These people aren't gonna go away. Now, a few weeks ago, he kind of liked the celebrity. He thought it was pretty cool. Well, after your dad gets hit with 2 life sentences, it's not so much fun anymore. So I agree. I don't think they should be bothering him to the point where they're looking in his windows. That's crazy. As far as the connection with the family, a couple of days ago, Grunge, I love that channel. They sum it up much better than I can. Let's look at that.
The high-profile homicide trial of South Carolina lawyer Alec Murdaugh has brought up painful memories of the 2015 hit-and-run death of 19-year-old Stephen Smith. So what's the connection between these two crimes? With a possible link to the Murdaugh family, many now question whether Stephen's death was an accident or if it was yet another mysterious death in the history of the prominent South Carolina legal family. Because of her son's sexuality, his mother, Sandy Smith, thinks her son's death could have been a hate crime, according to South Carolina news outlet Bluffton Today. In 2022, Alec Murdaugh was indicted on 2 counts of murder for the 2021 shooting deaths of his wife and son, Maggie and Paul Murdaugh, on the Murdaugh family's rural South Carolina estate near Charleston. At that time, Alec had also been indicted on 2 counts of conspiracy, including 1 narcotics charge. In the investigation of Maggie and Paul's murder, Stephen's 2015 case, ruled at that time an accident, was reopened.
Well, it's not going to bring Stephen back, but I will have a peace of mind to know whoever did this is going to pay.
Smith family attorney Mike Hemlep told People, "Sandy and I both believe that this was a murder. If anyone helps cover up what happened, they should be held accountable." As Bluffton Today goes on to explain, in 2015, Stephen Smith reportedly ran out of gas on the side of the highway. Said to have been walking home at the time, Smith was struck and killed by the mirror of a passing truck that left the scene. According to the coroner's report, his cause of death was severe blunt force trauma to the head. No one was charged with the crime. Sandy Smith found many inconsistencies in the official version of events. If her son had been hit by the mirror of a passing truck, the glass would have shattered, but no shards were found. There were also no skid marks or other signs of an automobile accident. Speaking with Bluffton Today, Sandy said her son was gay, and there were rumors that he was a stalking target. According to Sandy, Stephen's potential relationship with the boy might have played a part in his death. She told the outlet, "I just don't believe my son would have been walking in the middle of the road like that. He would have seen headlights coming and got off the road. It just doesn't make any sense." Sandy alleges his death was murder and said those responsible might have been classmates, adding, "This was a fight that he didn't have a chance to win. I know my son and he was strong. One person didn't do this because Stephen would have fought back." One enduring question about the Stephen Smith reported hit-and-run scene is why Alec Murdaugh and his brother Randy, also a lawyer, were there, having crossed the crime scene tape. The Murdaugh family name was reportedly brought up in the initial investigation into Stephen's death, but those leads were never followed. Randy Murdaugh also reportedly contacted Sandy Smith after the accident to offer his firm's legal services, though the Murdaugh family law firm denies that happened. What Sandy believes might have been the motivation behind Smith's alleged murder was an alleged romantic relationship between her son and another Murdaugh son, Richard Buster Murdaugh, Stephen's classmate. The theory goes that Alec and Randy Murdaugh may have arrived on the scene to cover up Buster's potential involvement, but there's no evidence to support that theory. This motive for the crime has never been explored, and Smith family attorney Mike Hemlep told News Nation there's also no evidence of them ever having had a relationship. Still, for many, a Murdaugh connection can't be ruled out. As Fitz News reporter Will Folks told News Nation, there was clearly a Murdaugh tie into the death of Stephen Smith, because if you read the investigatory reports from his death back in 2015, the Murdaugh name is mentioned dozens of times. Meanwhile, a spokesperson for Randy Murdaugh's law firm told News Nation, it was clear that this case was not handled correctly. Why? I can't tell you. Maybe it was simply incompetence. Maybe it was purposeful. But I do believe that the truth is going to come out. On March 3rd, 2023, Alec Murdaugh was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole for the murders of his wife and son. If you or a loved one has experienced a hate crime, contact the Victim Connect hotline by phone at 1-855-4-VICTIM. or by chat for more information or assistance in locating services to help. If you or a loved one are in immediate danger, call 911.
Okay, so I don't remember off the top of my head what was said about Buster. Their show on Monday wasn't really geared around Buster, but something must have set a few people off. So as far as leaving Buster alone, you're going to have to talk to the powers that be at 5 Rockefeller Center, News Nation, the New York Post, the New York Times, because any way you look at it, this situation with Stephen Smith is a real weird one. This was no accident. This was no accident. Why would Randy and Alex cross the crime scene? Why would they care that this kid had a hit and run? Why would they reach out to his mother and offer their services? Why? Concerned citizens? That is weird. That is weird. We don't know that Buster's involved. We don't know if Paul was involved. We don't know if Alex was involved. We don't know. There's some connection there. They're not Boy Scouts. They're not do-gooders. We have that much. We got that much down. But for them to show up at the scene tells me a lot. Kind of reminds me of the night that Paul had the boat wreck. Here comes Alex. And he's already doing damage control. Why? Because he had a damn good idea that Mallory was dead. He had a damn good idea that Paw was driving the boat. And he was doing damage control from the freaking ER. Somebody brought up Gloria Satterfield. That was also in this comment. I don't think Paul killed her. I really don't. The rumor around town, and no, I don't live there, people gave Maggie the nickname Maggie Murder or Murder Maggie. They thought Maggie got mad and pushed her down. My understanding is Alex wasn't there. Buster wasn't there. Let's not blame Bubba the dog. Let's not blame Bubba. According to Gloria Satterfield, her family, their attorney, Eric Bland, he doesn't believe there was a murder. He really doesn't believe she was murdered. Now, he could have changed his mind from when I saw that, from what he said to now. I don't know. But we do know that Alex talked to her family, said, file this lawsuit against my homeowner's insurance, and he kept it. So not only did we trip over the dogs and were disrespected with this 911 call, get this housekeeper off. Oh, like they were so put out to be asked any questions about this woman who was a member of their family. If you really want to think about it, Paul looked at her as like the maternal figure in his life, kept a picture of her in his wallet, loved him. Chris says, I live 30 minutes away. Word on the streets is Maggie pushed her. That was one of the very first things I read when I got into the whole Gloria Satterfield thing, and that was months ago. People, like locals, had even nicknamed Maggie. Maggie's not here. Maggie can't defend herself. So anyway, I got through all of that. I do apologize. I know some of you were like, what is going on here? What misinformation? Look, man, if the news gets it wrong, there's nothing I can do. That's all I can tell you. The rest is us going back and forth, talking like we always do, and having a good time doing it. Now, let's get up to a discussion that is really going on everywhere. Because even though the trial's over, the talk is not. You turn on pretty much any news station, you're going to have somebody popping on at some point talking about the appeals. Appeals. I'm saying it like Alex did on the stand, talking about all his appeals. people are like, he's not going to get an appeal. Well, if he gets an appeal, he's not going to win. Why would he even try for an appeal? Well, he's going to try for an appeal. He's probably going to get an appeal. Lots of people get appeals. The appellate court is slow moving. It is a backlog and a half because so many people are appealing or trying to get a new trial. It's a crazy situation. So I was talking to John about it. He had some really interesting things to say about the appeals. Just Me said, a pocket full of appeals. Even a pocket full of appeals, I don't think is going to help our friend Alec. Let's bring up our friend John. What's going on today, John?
Hey, it's great to be here and talking about the appeal, which let me tell you, it will absolutely happen. I'm reading right now that one of the lawyers, Mr. Harpootlian, said they will be filing appeal documents within 10 days, vowed they would appeal his conviction all the way up to the U.S. Supreme Court. So, yeah, there will be an appeal.
We got Supreme Court in on this too? Whoa.
Well, I'm not sure how exactly it would take a lot for it to get all the way up there. It's going to be definitely fought at their Court of Criminal Appeals or whatever they call it in South Carolina. There is often some slight variation in names. Instead of a district attorney down there, they have the solicitor for the 14th Judicial District, whatever. But there's going to be an appeal.
And that does not mean that he's going to win that appeal. He's just going to tie up people's time. People get appeals every single day.
Well, you be the prosecutor and I'll be the defense. He will tie up people's time. He certainly will. He'll also make legal arguments that may be addressed and may even become what we would call holdings. That's where the case will start to have precedential value. If the court up there rules on some aspect, some legal question, that doesn't mean he's going to win. A person can lose mightily upon every point they make, and yet their appeal might ultimately have some value because the court may address points that have not yet been addressed, and then that will be case law from then on. But just a 360 overview of this trial, I just got to tell you, this trial, it had everything. It was like a John Grisham novel brought to life. John Grisham could not have written a better novel about small town Southern lawyer scandal. Just amazing, and a spectacle, really something that fulfills the need in the human psyche for spectacle and ritual. I quoted from something in a previous show. I want to get the quote exactly right. It's from 10,000 Maniacs, a song. If lust and hate is the candy, if blood and love taste so sweet, then we give them what they want. Hey, hey, give them what they want. What a spectacle. Some of this stuff about Buster, and I'm not going to go off on Buster or anything like that, but I think it's actually kind of a longing for a sequel is what it is.
Oh, I think there's going to be a lot of sequels to this. Gloria Satterfield, that's not done. All the financial crimes that we heard more about than we heard about the murder during the trial, that's not just going to go away. I know some people say, oh, they're just going to offer him a plea deal and that's it. I think he's going to go down fighting. That's just my opinion. That's what it is. I think we're going to hear a lot more about Stephen Smith. But you're right. I mean, Netflix couldn't have wrote this. You have an influential family, a very strong legacy, political ties. Now, money. They were living the life, and
history. It goes so far back. You go all the way back to 1910 and the first Murdaugh, and they were already from a wealthy family. They made their money in mining. I think if you go back far enough, you're probably going to find some slavery in there. I wish somebody would dig a little deeper because I'm going to be quite surprised if there is not some history of slave owning in that South Carolina family that goes so far back and was rich in 1910. That to me would be an interesting aspect to connect them with that whole terrible, dark history of slavery in our country.
Then you have, of course, the murder mysteries going on. Don't get me going on all the peels. the
Mm-mm.
money laundering. I mean, it's one thing after another. It's the craziest thing. And I don't think it's not going to go away anytime soon. It's
No.
and it seems that it has, I don't know if it's because of the Netflix thing or the trial or a combination of both. It's really ramped up. I mean, the damn Today Show can't get enough of it. I mean, Savannah Guthrie and Craig Melvin, when they were talking to the jurors yesterday, I thought they were going to crawl in their laps.
It is amazing, and the way the thing it's not over. It's just going to keep going, and that's why we're talking about the appeal today, because that is definitely going to happen. They're vowing it in public, and by the way, that phrase, "I'm going to fight this all the way to the United States Supreme Court." Well, that is actually just an expression and not an actual statement of the path that the thing may take. But yeah, there's going to be an appeal, and let's. How you want to jump into this? Where shall we?
Let me ask you this really quick. I'm going to start at the, well, I'll get to that in a second. Let me ask you this real quick. Harpootlian, or Halputian, Poot Poot, as they call him, he's got very, very, very strong political ties. I mean, all the way to the White House. So what would be the odds of him taking this to the Supreme Court, considering the ties he has? I'm not saying
my
it's gonna happen. It's
my
just
word. When I before I got a lot of legal training, I always imagined that a path to the Supreme Court goes directly from your state court of appeals to the Supreme Court, and in fact, that's not really a simple statement of how it goes. I mean, if their system is like the Oklahoma system, it may have different names, but it's probably going to function a lot the same way. First, there will be an appeal to the Court of Criminal Appeals. And then after that, if it doesn't go their way, then they will appeal to their state Supreme Court. To get yourself, this is an overstatement, an overly simple statement, but to get yourself in front of the U.S. Supreme Court, you're going to have a federal claim, probably in a federal circuit court, that somehow gets you to the U.S. Supreme Court. That might be, and I know this sounds crazy, don't get mad, don't shoot the messenger. It would have to be Alex Murdaugh perhaps claiming a violation of his civil rights. That might be his path to the United States Supreme Court from a federal circuit court. And again, this is a vast oversimplification of all the different ways that things could go. I'll just point out, again, that expression, "I will fight this all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court," that is something lawyers just say. That's something, clients and plaintiffs. Yeah.
Could you just imagine old Firecrotch saying that his civil rights had been violated after all the people he has violated over the years? I mean, a sex worker is saying she thought he was going to kill her one time. You've got multiple people that he ripped off. Don't even get me going on Maggie and Paul, and we don't even know what the involvement is, if any, I'm being fair, with Stephen Smith. It's crazy. So let's
imagine it. I'm going to come up with arguments that he might use.
Never know. You never know. So we're going to start with, I'm going to play the clip where they're talking about secure telephones and electronic data.
Really doesn't have the ability, doesn't have the resources, doesn't have the lawful authority to execute search warrants, subpoena documents, to prove his or her innocence. And so a defendant cannot secure a crime scene, cannot lift the crime scene for fingerprints, shoe-wear impressions, cannot secure telephones and get electronic data in the course of an investigation. So the defendant is limited on what they can do.
Oh my.
In this case, not.
Okay, you go.
Let me tell you how this lawyer is trying to bamboozle that jury. Note the words "during an investigation." He's pointing out, I can't get my hands on this evidence during an investigation. Okay, yeah, but after the criminal indictment comes down, you can indeed issue a subpoena. You can go to court and say the defense needs access to this. I saw in the OJ trial, I mean, they were giving them actual, samples to sample. I remember there was this moment when Judge Ito rather dryly joked that they weren't going to be sharing the hair evidence. They weren't going to split hairs. And everyone was like, oh, Judge Ito, how droll. So the idea that the defense can't get their hands on stuff, and he's very careful to say during an investigation, but he's shuffling the deck all over. He's using the trick deck. He's trying hard to make the jury think that, oh, the state's got everything and we can't get our hands on anything. The reason the defense didn't try to get their hands on all the phone data, which after a court battle, they certainly would have been able to get their hands on it. They're entitled to look at all of that. In some cases, you'll see them running their own tests on things. If you're the defense, they were probably afraid of what would turn up. So, yeah. So he's bamboozling. He's using the trick deck.
And it's funny you say that because Mark Garagos, talking about another case, was talking about, cell phone evidence. And he said it's one of the first things that he tries to have suppressed or thrown out. He said, but sometimes the cell phone evidence actually proves the client innocent, and they don't even realize how it can work against them. But that's not what Griff here is trying to do. I think one of the reasons that this trial ran the way it did, one of the big reasons, you brought up Lance Ito, he was terrible. He was terrible. Is the judge. This judge was wonderful.
Yeah, I don't know how. I never knew Morgan Freeman had a career as a judge. It was surprising to see.
And we've been talking about that in Discord and I think Facebook, Morgan Freeman playing him in the docudrama that's going to be coming out. I say let the judge play himself. Let the judge play himself.
Absolutely. In fact, I think there were a lot of characters that could perhaps play themselves, and that would be interesting to the people that would watch it. But please let us give it a decent period of time before we just immediately go and make a drama. There are so many things that need to be wrapped up. We have this desire for instant gratification. I mean, they're making movies about things while the things are still unresolved. But so there are so many ways he tries to bamboozle this jury. I'm gonna try to stop using that word. Pull the wool over their eyes. That's what he's trying to do. We got another one lined up here.
It's right here.
But what doesn't strike us as fair is that the next morning on June the 8th, after the gruesome murders of Maggie and Paul, this is what is issued, a joint press release, Colleton County and SLED, that says, at this time, there's no danger to the public. At this time, there's no danger to the public. You have 2 people who have been executed within, y'all are out there, I know, is it 100 yards, 200 yards from Moselle Road? They've been slaughtered. And at this time, there's no danger to the public. Does that tell you that on June 8th, law enforcement had decided it had to be Ellen murdered? It's a fair question for you to ask yourselves. It's a question that's not been fairly answered in this trial.
That is interesting.
Yep.
There's no danger to the public. You have 2 people, like he said, they were slaughtered, they were executed, but you said there's no danger to the public. How do you know there's no danger to the public? Were you already thinking that it was Alex, or did you buy the vigilante boat story? Go, John.
Yeah, this is the classic rush to judgment, focus too soon upon my client, excluded other people that could be guilty. I swear that argument is so worn, you can see the holes right through it. But one thing that clip cannot show very well, he had a sign. For some reason, he's holding up a sign with those words that he's had made. At this time, there's no danger to the public. You see a quickly corner of the sign, and then the camera moves. And I'm not sure why they did that. Like, is there some local rule about not showing an exhibit? Was the cameraman actually pro-prosecution and didn't want to help the defense at that point? Did something about a facial expression catch their interest that at that moment they moved the camera? But there was this great big sign, at this time there's no danger to the public. Okay, well, let's address that. An investigation and what you have to tell the public are two different things. And the criteria for each are completely different. Are we going to have people worrying until a trial has ended that there's a murderer running loose? When something like this happens, the people that are in charge of public safety have to make a decision whether they're going to tell the public, lock yourselves inside for somebody is on the loose, or if they're going to weigh the factors and go, yeah, I think this is what we need to tell the public at this time. And it's the fact they lean so much weight on this announcement, they're grasping at straws.
It's a good argument, though.
It's a classic argument.
I mean, everything is said and done. I think about the Lily Peters case. They did not know at the time that her cousin is the one that killed her. It's a horrible, horrible case. Horrible. It hurts me to even talk about it. And they were telling people, walk your kids home from school. Keep your kids inside. They thought there was somebody out there, that a stranger had done this to her. Then they found out it was a family member, a juvenile cousin. But
they do indeed make the wrong call sometimes.
And in this case, well, they didn't know about the cousin yet, so they didn't make the wrong call. But in this case, there's no danger to the public. So were they buying this hook, line, and sinker from Alex about the vigilante mad about the boat wreck, or were they already eyeing Alex?
Well, if it was a vigilante mad about the boat wreck, then indeed there is no danger to the public. And if it is Alex, he's probably not going to go on a mass murder spree, though it seems like they were really not looking at Alex in the very beginning. For whatever reason, they made this judgment that this is an isolated event. We're not going to be worrying about someone who's on the loose doing more murders. You have to inform the public. You have to sound the all clear. Are we supposed to disrupt commerce, close shopping malls, block off roads and so forth? Decisions have to be made about what you tell the public. And please note, it was the right decision according to the jury. There really was no danger to the public at this time. I mean, unless you're connected to the Murdaughs, then it seems like there's really a constant and ever-present danger to you.
Yeah, if you're in their inner circle. And it is so rare that the sheriff comes out and says, there's a danger to the public. We need everybody, to stay indoors. The only thing close, except for Lily Peters, I can come to it, is the chief in Moscow, Idaho, saying, well, we think this is targeted and isolated, but be vigilant. But we know that story. All right, so let's get to where they talk about hair in the hands.
Deputy Rutland talked about seeing hair in Maggie's hands, you'll recall. You didn't hear anything about the hair in Maggie's hands from that moment forward. Was it tested? Was it sent off for analysis? There was no evidence of what, if anything, happened to the hair in Maggie's hands. Was it as a result of a struggle with her assailant? Was it her own hair? I mean, we don't know the answer to that. We know they failed to take fingerprints from the feed room, and they should have. They failed to properly take footwear impressions from the feed room.
Let's talk about the hair. We know about the fingerprints and all that stuff. What's up with the hair?
Well, first of all, he's trying to do this red herring argument where, there's this mysterious thing that wasn't followed up upon or somehow wasn't preserved. And into that empty vessel, we want to pour all of our latent suspicions, our inability to come to a conclusion beyond reasonable doubt. We want to pour it all into that empty vessel, and in that vessel is the one-armed man, the assailants bent on vengeance for the boat accident, all three of them with three guns. Whatever it is, you point to these, let's call them loose ends that were not followed up on. It's a loose end that points to the one-armed man. That's not anybody's phrase but mine at the moment, but I think it sums it up adequately. And as for the hair, yeah, it was probably dog hair.
Probably dog hair. But Bubba strikes again.
Bubba, my word. Does anybody else see it the way I do, that those words, Bubba got a chicken in his mouth. It's a guinea, a guinea hen, that the idea of the dog with the forbidden chicken in his mouth, it's like a prophecy. It's like a dark omen of things to come. The ancient Romans would take the guts of an animal and look at it and look for omens. And there is just something to me that is dark and eerie about Bubba got a chicken in his mouth.
Damn it, Bubba.
Yeah. Yeah, Bubba solved the case. I hate this. There's people dead. That's a bit of dark humor, and it's terrible what has happened. But Bubba played a key role here, and I hope that his tail has healed. I hope people are kind to Bubba. I hope that nobody in the Murdaugh family is blaming Bubba and punishing Bubba, because really, Bubba he didn't know. Bubba didn't know. He's just wagging his tail.
Bubba was just doing what dogs do.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now we're going to get
solving murder mysteries. That's what they do.
That's what Bubba did. Bubba should have been in the courthouse.
Bubba is a hero, and I don't know who's going to play him during the movie, but Bubba's a hero.
Just like I say with the judge, let Bubba play himself. Let Bubba be a Hollywood dog.
Oh, but dogs don't have as long of a lifespan. It's going to take a while for this movie, and we already know his tail is injured. Let's let one of Bubba's offspring play him if it takes too long. Son of Bubba.
Fair enough. Now we get to the doubt they were trying to put into the jury's mind about the DNA.
The thing that has baffled us, has completely baffled us, is why did they never take DNA samples off of Maggie's clothes, her dress? Why did they never take DNA samples off Paul's clothes? They never did. They never did. When we asked their investigators, why didn't you? Well, that's somebody else's job. That's somebody else's job. It was never done. But you know whose clothing they took DNA off of extensively? Alec. And you heard Agent Zapata talk about all the different grids on her shirt where DNA was samples were taken.
Okay. So right there, they tried. I tell you what, I give them an E for effort. That's for sure. Because when they're telling the closing argument, why didn't they take all they were concerned about was DNA on Alex? You go.
Yeah, well, let me throw it right back at that defense attorney. Why didn't you demand testing? Yes, you absolutely have that option. Now you're going to have to go through a whole procedure and so forth. But these clothes, they are not lost. They remain in evidence. And when you have a trial like this, you can say, like the OJ thing with the blood. They're like, no, we want our own independent analysis. You go in, you argue it. It's another red herring. Oh, why not this? Why not that? And they want to act like, oh, they're so innocent. We just have to react to anything they're throwing at us, and we're helpless. Our hands are tied. We can't do anything to defend ourselves against this stuff. Yes, you could. You could totally ask for your own testing. Oh my word. I mean, not while the investigation is going on, but after the criminal indictment in court. Yeah, they could do that. And I'm not saying it's a simple, there are definitely pitfalls, and it'd be subject to, South Carolina case law. They may have case law that makes it overly complicated. but in general, the defense could have demanded this kind of testing. They didn't, and then they want to play it like this.
Yeah, funny that the people that still say that Alex is innocent and didn't get a fair trial don't understand that part of that. His defense team could have demanded these things. You can't demand it when you're given the closing arguments. All you can do is put doubt in the jurors' minds. It didn't work. Let's talk about the OnStar data, if you don't mind. I'm going to get to that clip.
We're looking into it. Well, what we learned during this trial is, sure, SLED sent a subpoena via fax machine to somebody in Detroit, I believe, and whoever got it in Detroit, whether there was a number off, I have no idea what the reason was, but we do know the initial response was, we don't have anything. We don't have any OnStar data that you're looking for. There's no indication that SLED followed up with a phone call. There's no indication SLED followed up with a letter. There's no indication SLED did anything other than put it in a file, put the response in a file. And that was it. That was it, ladies and gentlemen, until somebody watching this trial somewhere contacted somebody at General Motors and said, why don't you guys cooperate with the FBI and SLED on this investigation?
And he throws his hands up in the air in front of the jury, and they don't know. Go ahead, John.
Oh, my word. There are three things going on here, and I'm going to highlight them, and then I'll argue about each of them. OnStar data, yeah, just like everything else, you could have subpoenaed yourself. Second thing, yeah, it actually is hard to get OnStar data. I've had to try to do it. And third, there's an aspect here. This is what happens when a trial is held in public. People jump in and have an effect. So let's cover the first thing. Yeah, they could have totally subpoenaed that themselves, and they want to sit there and criticize SLED. Yeah, well, you know, if you got it yourself, and we're gonna. One thing you do not want to do is accidentally turn up evidence that makes your client look worse. So when it's a black box and you don't know what's in it, you're not going to send that subpoena yourself, because there's probably going to be a record of you having it, and then the other side's going to be like, "Hey, what is going on here?" But secondly, okay, I'm going to have to actually take the defense's side here for a moment. It is actually very difficult to get OnStar data. It is outrageously difficult. And I swear there ought to be a federal law or something. It's your car, it's your data. You ought to be able to get it out of your own car if you need it. OnStar is the devil. Okay, so I'll just say that. And I think that times like this, it's great that we can raise such obscure and interesting issues in the public eye. Who is out there talking about the fact that, yeah, OnStar data is actually quite hard to get, and something ought to be done about that. Third thing, you got a public trial here, and there are people outside the trial that are jumping in. Somebody who maybe is familiar with the process of trying to get OnStar data, and they're like, hey, what's going on here for it? And they're not even part of the trial, and they are somehow affecting it. And this is what happens when it's a public spectacle. Everybody knows, and somebody who has a piece of it, they can affect it. And it's one reason you sometimes want to raise the profile of a trial, because every kind of witness comes forth. Like the sex worker. Yeah.
I wonder what's going to happen with that. I'm not even going to try to speculate right now.
No, that is a whole show for a later date, but yeah.
Oh, man. You know what? Actually, every show is. Just going through the comments this morning, each subject is a 5-part show. Everything is so convoluted, complex, and corrupt. Listen to me with all my C words. And there's not enough time. There's not enough time. Let's get to surface extraction. This is the one thing that confused me. Well, not the one thing, but we're going to talk about that as well.
I wasn't driving. My phone was not with Maggie's phone at any point in time, going down the road, I did what I said I did. Well, they did extract it, But what we've learned, the extraction was a superficial extraction. Not because Alec requested it, that's just what they did. Said a logical surface extraction. So they didn't go in and pull out any GPS pinging data like you see on Paul's phone. They didn't get it off Alec's.
Why is that? Why did they pull surface extraction from Paul but not from Alex? That's what he's saying. He's telling the jury right there.
Well, sounds like initially they did indeed do just a surface extraction, but then ultimately later they got all the way deep in the guts of that phone. They found that video, and just to distinguish here between a surface extraction versus, shall we say, dumping the phone. And I'm really involved with phone dumps. I'm the kind of guy, it's been my job to go through all the data dumped from a phone, looking at the timestamp of every LOL, and trying to figure out something like, well, if this happened while this person was passed out, there's only a 45-minute window where their phone is inactive, stuff like that. So I love phone data. I love going through it. It's my thing, one of my many things. So surface is like, you're looking at the things that can be seen in the phone if you, as a user of the phone, are accessing it. And then a deeper extraction, that's where people with very technical skills are dumping everything that's in the phone, including the CSLI, the cell site location information, which towers that phone was pinging off of, so you can track its location, which is something that is in the phone. But interestingly enough, it is also in the hands of the phone company. So, again, he's just making one of these, hide the ball, trick plays, magic show things, or he's trying to make it sound like, terrible rush to judgment here. Why initially were they only doing this? It's a complete red herring.
But they got the deleted calls. They knew that Alex deleted a ton of calls. Did he think that we had forgotten all of that? So he's making it sound like they were cherry picking the evidence.
He's trying to make it sound like that, and this is a useful thing and a very dangerous thing, perhaps, to learn that when you delete something in your phone, it's not completely gone. Just like when you delete an email, and it may linger for a while in your trash folder, but even after you delete the trash folder, in a electronic sense, you might still be able to find traces of it here and there. It is very hard for an amateur to cover their tracks with a phone. Smashing the phone doesn't work. Throwing it in a pond doesn't work. I mean, there's stuff that the phone company is retaining for years. We live in a world where if somebody wants to look into our movements, and we have a phone, just like Bushy and the Idaho murders, he allegedly tried to cover his tracks with his phone by not taking the phone there. But then he wasn't as careful when he was casing the place. Phones just give you away every time. So many court battles are constantly turning into what's on the phone. I mean, I know I fought a 5-year battle to try to suppress phone evidence, and never actually got it suppressed, but we managed to get hearings on aspects of Carpenter. Suffice to say, it's all these trials are turning into phone data. Trials about phone data.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We hear it all the time. And when a case is new, you have people that, well, I'm glad that you explained going line by line by line. And they always say, well, they should be able to solve it fast. All they have to do is get the phone records. Well, I'm going to bring up another case, the Daybell Vallow case. When I was reading one of the arrest affidavits, and they were talking about what they had to go through to get their phone data. And when they get the phone data, it doesn't look like the screenshots that we get. They have to, the way that they have to piece it up with the cell phone towers and everything, it's a mess. It's not an easy job. I couldn't think it would be.
It is not. It is a lot like a great big jigsaw puzzle, and you have to love it. Because, like, for example, if I'm having a text conversation with you, and each of those texts are timestamped, but then simultaneously somebody else is texting me, and maybe I'm answering them, maybe my phone rings, and in the data, each of those is a separate thing. So you have to piece them together and interpolate them. I'm not saying interpret, I'm saying interpolate them. You have to wedge them in where they go in the order. And meanwhile, your phone is also getting all kinds of junk, but that shows the phone is turned on. So it's hours and hours of human labor. It's not like you dump the phone and just, oh, there it is. I see it right there. Mystery solved. No, some phone data legal nerd needs to do all that work behind the scenes, hours, days of work.
And they have to be super, super meticulous and very patient.
Yeah, because if you get something wrong, the other side's going to jump all over it. And it could be a harmless thing, but then all of a sudden your credibility starts to go because you've missed something. You've got a typo. You've misstated it. Yeah.
All right, let's get to where he says, easy, easy, easy target. You could tell he was definitely trying to get this point across.
For Alex, long-time drug problem, his financial issues, misconduct were exposed. And that made him an easy target for SLED.
Okay, I wanted to highlight this just to say.
SLED really got the bad rap. They were slinging mud at them the whole time. Now, it is not uncommon for defense attorneys to try to make the police look corrupt, look inept, look like they didn't want to do any detective work, so they just pinned it on the first person that was there. You go.
Yeah, well, he is going after SLED, and what an interesting and cool acronym. I mean, it rarely snows in South Carolina, and yet SLED is the name of that police force. I think that's kind of cool. Yeah, of course he's trashing the police. The point I wanted to make, and it's somewhat of a facetious point, is that the first time he said the word easy, yeah, I wasn't quite convinced. But then the second time when he said it, I found myself on the fence. And then the third time when he said it, I was buying his argument. This is weak spaghetti with weak sauce with a sprinkling of weak Parmesan. Lawyers should be much more articulate than that.
Oh, I dug it. I dug the easy, easy, easy target. I'm like, such inflection, such inflection. Hey, you brought up Parmesan cheese. This is totally off topic, but I have to bring it up. Oh, Glenjamin, where have you been, Glenjamin? Every day somebody's been popping up in chat I haven't seen in a while. That's Glenjamin is here. Thank you, Glenjamin. Did you know that when you get the Parmesan cheese that's in the plastic shaker bottle off the grocery store aisle, it is sawdust that has been flavored, or it's some sort of cotton byproduct? It's not real cheese.
Well, there's a lot of fakery that goes on. We were having a problem with Chinese honey for a while that wasn't really honey. It was a clever concoction. And when you're in a Chinese restaurant and you get the wasabi, many times it is not genuine wasabi. It is a food-colored, clever concoction of hot mustard and other things that tastes a lot like wasabi, but is not real wasabi. But we are off in tangential land. Let us return to the cold, harsh, bloody reality of this court case.
Okay. I just had to bring that up. I didn't mean to ruin your day. I just had to let you.
No, I'm not. I love it. I freaking love it. I'm so glad I get to talk about fake wasabi. It's great.
Let's get to where they said they don't make this claim lightly, although they were saying it straight to a jury. Let's go.
And I hate to say this, but the evidence is crystal clear. From that moment, they started fabricating evidence against Ellen. Well, Mr. Griffin, that's an awful charge. Don't all lawyers accuse law enforcement of fabricating evidence? And I can tell you, this guy right here was a federal prosecutor, was a state prosecutor, and some of my best friends are in law enforcement. And I don't make that claim lightly. Here, what you have heard is they came up with a report that says Alex t-shirt had high velocity blood spatter on. High velocity blood spatter. What's that? That means you're within feet of a shooting. And they didn't just say any shooting. It said in their report, it says as a result of Paul's murder.
Okay, he says, I don't make these claims lightly.
Well, this is what
They fabricated. How does an attorney get away with such an accusation? And this is not the only trial that something like this has been said, but they do. They get away with it.
Well, you are allowed to make colorable arguments. It's not considered slander or defamation, or you get to make those arguments when you are the defense. But let me say this: that this whole "I don't make this claim lightly." This is what, hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of legal fees will get you. A prosecutor that will stand up there and accuse a former prosecutor who will stand up there and accuse the police of fabricating evidence. That's what your money gets you. And what this guy thinks the jury doesn't understand, and I think probably they really don't, is they do not understand how morally ambidextrous lawyers are. You're a prosecutor for years, and then one day you're like, oh, I can make a lot more money as a defense attorney, and you just switch sides. So when he is standing up there saying, it's like, oh, believe me, really believe me, because deep down in my heart, I'm like a prosecutor. I play for the other side, so you can believe me. It is like someone is in a checkers game and they want to say, I know I'm on the red side today, but deep in my heart, I'm really a black checker guy. So you can trust me when I'm telling you that that's a terrible move right there. Seriously, you're playing for this team, you're wearing this team's jersey, and so you're going to try to say that the other team, I used to play for them, and they're bad guys. No, you're just playing for a different team today. Don't make this claim lightly. No, it's not lightly at all. You were paid very well to make that claim and that argument.
And it's almost like they were making an argument for second-degree murder. For one thing, they kept ramming the peels down our throat. They talk about the peels and the money, but you go from talking about a dog chasing a chicken to, well, you know what I'm going to say.
Yeah, I think we're going to look at between 4410 and 4452 next. Is that right?
That would be it. Here we go.
4 minutes later, the state would have you to believe that Alec Murdaugh up and blew his son's brains out of his head and murders his wife after having that conversation about Bubba having a chicken or a guinea. 4 minutes later, their case wants you to believe that this is a family down at the dog kennels doing what families do. They're checking on a dog, tail, Bubba's out running around, and they're saying, Bubba, got a chicken. Now, why would Alec not want law enforcement to hear that? I mean, there's nothing on that tape. There's nothing on that tape that indicates there's any strife, any conflict, any anger, any planning, anybody being afraid, anybody running, anybody scurrying. Nothing. Maggie, Paul, and Alec down at the kennel.
Okay, he's saying he had no reason to lie about being at the kennels. There was nothing on that tape he needed to cover up. I see a lot of people in here talking about the pills. Let me just do a poll real quick before we get to our commentary, our deep dive we're doing up here. Did the whole peel argument jerk any heartstrings with any of you guys at all? Because I could have given a shit. I was sick of hearing about it. And we're going to see, we have been seeing It's a trend. It's a movement. It's a thing. Over and over and over and over. In these cases, we're going to hear these attorneys try to appeal to the jury. They're going to find one person on there who's in recovery, has a child that can't get it together, has a spouse that's in recovery, and they're going to try to twist that. And they know what they're doing. I thought it was way too much. Now go ahead, John. I went way off script here. Right.
Yeah, I think we got to play the, did we play that? We did play that. Yes. Okay. Well, yeah, the defense seems to be trying to make a case for second degree murder. They're not making a very good case of that. They're saying, how can there be this calm conversation moments before? They even sound kind of happy, like, Bubba got a chicken, and then it's murder. And they seem to be saying that like it wasn't planned meticulously, that somehow somebody had to be agitated first and the tape is not showing any agitation. I mean, this argument absolutely just doesn't work, because the prosecution is saying this was a carefully planned, meticulous murder. So I would argue, why on earth wouldn't you go from a good-humored conversation about Bubba to coldly and brutally murdering your family members like you've planned for a long time? Of course, you're going to be faking it beforehand. You're going to get the drop on them. So it's just if I use another metaphor, we could talk about more fake food items. It is weak sauce on weak chicken with a side order of I don't know what. It's a very weak argument.
Huge. And I think a lot of the appeal and the financial talk, I think it was, I mean, just hearing the juries talk, they didn't really care about any of that stuff. There have been cases before where the jury got so frustrated having to hear about stuff they didn't want to hear about, they didn't care about, that they were kind of zoning out. We know what happened with this one. Hell, they caught one of the jurors asleep. Did you hear about that?
Well, I think I saw a movie once. I'm trying to remember which movie it was. Maybe it was a civil, the one with John Travolta and the bad water. If you're a lawyer and you fall asleep, you wake up, you say, objection. Now, people, this stuff can be very dry. Nodding off in court is not terribly uncommon, but when you're doing it in front of a national audience, I mean, heck, they'll probably make songify videos about it or something, but it happens. People nod off. People get a little drowsy. We're covering very dry stuff: phone data, timestamps, financial records. My word, I hope that jury has enough caffeine. Hey, the thing you said about trying to pull those heartstrings about addiction, this is so true. On any given jury, I think you got about 70-80% of the jury members that are going to think, yeah, addicts will lie, steal, do anything. You can't trust an addict. And then you've got, 10, 20%, 30% that might be like, my father struggled his whole life with alcoholism. I'll say that actually, my father did struggle his whole life with alcoholism. I have worked in places where you deal with addicts. So, and it will just tug at their heartstrings. I mean, addiction recovery is practically a form of religion in our nation. A lot of this talk about recovery, it becomes spiritual talk. Yeah, leaning on your higher power. So you have to make those arguments so carefully. But I think if you look at academic evidence, an addict is statistically more likely to commit a crime than a non-addict. And that's a damn scientific fact.
For money. But like I saw in this should be a title of a show. I can't remember who said it, but it just scrolled past me. They said, pills don't pull triggers. So like you said, academic evidence, we all know the pills didn't do it, but we know where they were going with their argument. Let's get to the S attempt. You know, we can't say the whole word out loud, but if they say it, there's nothing we
Can
can
I
do.
say starts with S, ends with uicide, or is that
Yes.
okay?
Yes, you can.
Evidence that he would do
I'm
that.
go ahead. You were going to
Have
play something,
evidence
I
of
think.
what he would do and did do. And if you'll pull up Defense Exhibit 125, which is in evidence. On September 2nd, 3rd, 4th, I forget the date. This is Labor Day weekend. He gets his drug dealer, Curtis Eddie Smith, to shoot him in the head till he couldn't go on because it was all going to come crashing down, and he had a big life insurance policy.
Well, Cousin Eddie has a different version of events. I'm going to pause it right there, and you tell me what we were talking about because it's mind-blowing.
It is mind-blowing that this was a defense exhibit, that they're trying to make the point that somebody who would stage an event where they end up getting shot in the head, and yeah, there's more than one version of this, but I think every version involves it being staged by Alex. I'm supposed to believe that somebody that would stage an event that involved shooting themselves in the head or getting shot in the head, or maybe they were planning to shoot the other guy in the head, and whatever it was that was staged here. I'm supposed to believe that that person is less likely to have murdered their family. This is the most extreme and crazy thing. I mean, if I'm willing to kill myself, if my moral basis is so weak that I'm willing to kill myself, why wouldn't I kill other people?
Yeah. And another great point, Bruno said, if he was really planning on checking out of the hotel before kickout time, we know he had plenty of peels. Talk about extravagant. You're exactly right. This is your exhibit. This is how low he will go.
So when Alex is at financial collapse, he doesn't go kill somebody else. He tries to end it himself. This is a natural response. You don't want anybody to do it. But people kill themselves from being exposed. Don't kill their wife they adore, son, the apple of his eye, as some people have said. That's not. That is, I don't have the adjective for that. That is so outlandish. I don't have a word for it. Totally illogical, irrational, and insane. Those are words I wrote down. For someone to kill their loved ones when their criminal conduct is being exposed. So, you can take that now. Yeah, thank you, Doug. Yesterday we heard a lot from Mr. Waters. And I've been in Mr. Waters' position. As I explained, I was a federal prosecutor for a number of years. I've been a state prosecutor, part-time mostly. And
All right, so that's the end of part 1. We'll do part 2 another day because we have more things to discuss on this show.
Yeah.
I don't like when prosecutions or defenses do this to juries where they almost try to shame them and question their intelligence when they say things like, it's totally illogical to expose his crimes by committing murder. Then he mentions Maggie is the apple of his eye. I wouldn't go that far. There's some sex workers that will tell you different.
Okay, to be fair, there's one sex worker that we know about so far. I just want to take the defense there and say it's not plural, it's one.
And all the others, he could have been like, please dress exactly like Maggie. Please put a wig on that looks just like my wife. I'm sure
we've got to do a show just on the sex worker, but spicy trigger alert.
Exactly. I hate those trigger alerts. This is for adults only. or people who think like adults. It was a graze wound, so we know that. So let's get to that. He mentions being a prosecutor again. So we already know that he was a prosecutor before. What does that have to do with anything? And why shame the jury that you want to vote for you? Let's get down to it and tell them it's illogical. You'd got to be some kind of idiot to say he's guilty. Look at him. Did you not see that graze wound with all that gauze around his red head?
Well, when you're trying to lead people along the primrose path to this conclusion you want, you can't hint. You got to get right out there, like, this is completely crazy. You know, like he's making this strong argument over a very weak piece of evidence. You know, illogical. I think. Well, keep in mind the prosecution laid out the cold, stunning logic of this. So it's almost like he's just flailing at words. You know, he says, you know, what I wrote down here. I mean, in his own mind, is he kind of lost in his own argument and he's just trying to get back on track? It's weak, just weak.
So if you in your office, if they came to you and said, hey, remember that case we had last week, Alex Murdaugh? And you're going to go, wow, I've slept since then. But now that you remind me, that was a crazy one. How would you appeal it?
Okay, let's lay out exactly how we're going to appeal this. First, we'll do the overview of the arguments that would be made on appeal, in my opinion. Number one, an ineffective assistance of counsel argument. Number two, you're going to have to make some kind of legalistic argument about the grand jury indictment was flawed and based on falsified evidence. There's a rather complex change of venue argument. There's a junk science argument to be made. Interestingly enough, I'll tell you why you really cannot make a botched investigation argument very effectively, despite all the things that were pointed out. I'll tell you why that is. And then finally, there is the tried and true and never works cumulative harmless error argument. I've already, written this brief in my head. So we shall start with ineffective assistance of counsel. What do you think about that?
I want to hear it.
Well, I just thought you might have your own opinions about the various ways they were ineffective. I mean, his phone goes off. He's apologizing about his allergies. He's waving around a piece of paper. And then the prosecution comes in there with their meticulous, finely crafted, coldly logical exhibits. How do you feel about ineffective assistance of counsel here?
I would think putting him on the stand wasn't their best move, but it was explained by many, I love those experts on TV, and I'm being totally sarcastic when they said, well, in all reality, they work for him. And I have a feeling that he insisted on being put on the stand. So that could be ineffective. I think the fact that accusing Sled of fabricating evidence, that turns a juror away. They don't want to hear that. Now, some are all about it. I thought that was ineffective. But I don't think that would be enough to get him off on an appeal.
No, but, with an ineffective assistance of counsel argument, generally, a lawyer can act within a broad spectrum of things. You have to really, really mess up to make the standard of ineffective assistance of counsel. You're always going to try. If you find a few threads you can pull at, you'll make that argument on appeal. In fact, I have actually worked for a lawyer that made that argument against himself on appeal. And when you think about it, that is strangely brave. That is like a soldier calling down mortar fire on his own position because he's being overwhelmed. And the court came right back and said, no, you weren't ineffective at all, counselor. So a very hard, very uphill battle to win. And the standard that the courts are going to look at it really doesn't have a whole lot to do with at this particular moment. He was making a bad argument, or he should have done this, or he should have done that. That you can say that that argument was weak in retrospect. You can say that that decision was bad, but different lawyers with different styles will make different decisions. You have got to get up in the morning and work hard all day screwing up to get to ineffective assistance of counsel. You've got to be dating the defendant's ex-wife, to get there. You're going to make the argument, but it's very hard to win.
Well, we have a couple. Alicia. Hello, Alicia. Where you been, girlfriend? She said defense attorney tweeting articles during the trial. Dream of a Hive, what a cool name, said ineffective because they opened the door for all the evidence they argued should not be included.
With and those are arguments you could make, but at the end of the day, they're just not going to be winning arguments. You've got to screw up so mightily in the eyes of the appeals court before you would be ineffective assistance of counsel. You got to practically not show up or blow deadlines, probably more than one deadline, or just fail to make. Wow, even failing to make an argument is probably not going to get you ineffective. It's a incredibly difficult bar to reach to be ineffective assistance of counsel, and yet I think that the argument will be made for ineffective assistance of counsel because you got to try. As I said in the last show, you're the defense, you're getting paid, you got to argue something. So moving on to the grand jury indictment was flawed and based on falsified evidence. What do you think of that one?
Now, this is one that really was getting people going during the trial. I haven't really heard much about it since, but a lot of people were saying this jury's going to be hung or he is going to walk because they said there were a lot of lies from SLED to the grand jury.
Yep.
They got a grand jury indictment and then some. So how do you go back on that?
Well, it's pretty hard to unring the bell, as we say, once you've got a grand jury indictment. And people want to point out, well, some of this stuff in retrospect was either not true or, whatever. They want to poke at the grand jury indictment. And the standard to get a grand jury indictment is not proof beyond a reasonable doubt. It's a much lower standard to say, yeah, it looks like this guy might be guilty of something. Go ahead and put him on trial. There was an attorney named, I think he was a famous New York attorney called Saul Weckler. And a famous quote he made about grand juries was in a book by Tom Wolfe called Bonfire of the Vanities. Saul Weckler once said he could get a grand jury to indict a ham sandwich. The grand jury system is in our Constitution. It is supposed to be a kind of check, a kind of balance on prosecutors or whatever you might want to call them at the time the Constitution was made. It's supposed to be a kind of check on the government that citizens, good and true, they will decide whether somebody will even be charged with this terrible crime. And instead, in actual practice, grand juries mostly do whatever prosecutors ask them to do. It's practically a decoration on our legal system. So I don't think you're going to get anywhere arguing about the grand jury indictment being flawed. I think, though, you want to make some kind of argument about a person, getting an indictment on this flawed evidence. You're going to have to make a very finely wrought, that's a legal phrase, very finely wrought argument about the role of grand juries. But, at the end of the day, you're not going to get anywhere, but you got to try.
Yeah, you're right about grand juries, except for in Portland, Oregon, with the Kyron Horman case. I don't know what went wrong there, But
There are exceptions. There are notable exceptions to the general rule about grand juries doing whatever a prosecutor wants. For example, during Prohibition, grand juries would refuse to indict people that were making alcohol because they were all drinkers themselves. That would sometimes happen. Grand juries have been known to be a little rebellious in some cases, but the overall rule is it is just a quick, greased up hill with gravity helping you to get that indictment from a grand jury.
Danny said, arguing South Carolina is corrupt because we corrupted it. Murdaugh/Poot/Jim. I love that comment.
Yeah, he's being tried by the system he created and helped play well. Helped to play a role in making what it is today.
That was kind of a tough one. Yeah, it's like, but dude, not just you, but your whole family set this up.
Oh, geez. I wanted to mention, of course, it would be, I think, his great-grandfather, Alex's great-grandfather, who was the solicitor in 1910. And that guy was killed in a very mysterious train accident. Some say he was waving at the train as it came, and got to avoid the forbidden word that starts with S. But there was a settlement that in 1910 dollars was roughly equivalent to $2 million today. So let's just think about within families. Within families, there are certain ethics, certain ways of thinking that happen that are taught behind closed doors. I think very poor families teach their children things like, don't take no shit off anybody. Yeah, and then you see where that's the result of that. And it seems like within that family, the idea that you sacrifice yourself, your very life, to carry on for the next generation and the legacy, like a Roman senator doing himself with a knife in his warm bathtub, it seems like this kind of thing is a value within that family, that you would even take your own life to carry on the family legacy. I think I've gotten off on a dark tangent there, but
no, big time, because I mean, that's how they were known around the country. If you're going to sue a railroad, you get these people. They know how to do it.
Yeah. So let's move away from easily indicted ham sandwiches and get to the next argument, the rather complex change of venue argument. And it is not as old and tired as you think. There are some new things about that I want to talk about. First of all, let's talk about what is Murdaugh country. Because when I first started the trial, it's like, well, wait a minute. They live in Hampton County, they're being tried in Colleton County. At first I was confused, and then I looked into it, and it turns out that in the 14th Judicial District, the solicitor, he is the solicitor, let's say the prosecutor, for 5 counties, which are Allendale, Colleton, Hampton, Beaufort, and Jasper County. Colleton, for example, only has 38,000 people. So this is a wider geographic area that's all Murdaugh country. Now, as it turns out, when we want to talk about a change of venue, in that state, you can get a change of venue, but it has to go to a county in the same judicial district. That's their law. You gotta wonder how that law came about and who may have had a role in creating that law, which I think would have been real advantageous to a prosecutor in Murdaugh country at one point. But under that law, he would have had to be tried in a county that's in the same district. It wouldn't have made any difference. There was no point in the change of venue argument. Even if you changed venue, you would still be in Murdaugh country. So do you want to know how you try to get around that?
How?
Well, first of all, that law is the law. It is a statute. But if and in a change of venue argument in that state, looked into this a little, both a prosecutor and defense they can ask for a change of venue. They can go to the judge. I was trying to find out if the judge in his own discretion can do that. Hadn't really gotten an answer. I mean, if neither side want to change a venue, could a judge ask for it? I don't have an answer in that, but I think what should have happened, and this will be grounds, that they'll try with appeal, I think, okay? They might try this, is to say, despite the law, this guy could not have gotten a fair trial anywhere in those 5 counties, and therefore somebody should have done maybe an interlocutory appeal to their court, to their appeals court. They should have tried. They should have pointed out that there's something, here we go, unconstitutional about this law regarding change of venue. I think if I was writing this appeal, I would make a very complex, finely wrought constitutional argument about his inability to get a fair trial because of that specific change of venue law, and how it's a violation of his civil rights, and that might be the argument that somehow gets you into federal court and on that path to the Supreme Court. Maybe. I know I went off on a finely wrought constitutional tangent there, but I love this stuff. I'm sick that way.
I love it. So hands down, there's going to be an appeal, but that doesn't mean he's going to walk out a free man. But it is part of the system. I don't know in South Carolina for a double homicide, double murder, how many appeals does he get? Because he's not on death row.
I probably should have started with that. Okay. There are 2 types of appeals. There is direct appeal and there is post-conviction relief. So when his defense attorneys are saying, within 10 days, we're going to be filing an appeal. Well, it's not really an appeal they'll be filing. It's more like notice of an appeal. Writing up an appeal, believe me, it takes a lot longer. But within a certain period of time, and it can vary by state, you have to give notice that you're going to be filing an appeal. And your direct appeal is going to happen relatively soon after the trial. And you're going to bring up, probably points very much like the points that I brought up. And maybe they've got some others, or maybe they don't think the venue thing is a winner. Who knows? But they will argue on direct appeal. And we'll see what comes of that. Now, if an appeal like that gets slapped down, and statistically it will, then after that, you've got an opportunity for something called direct appeal. Now, that often takes place years after I said direct appeal. I meant post-conviction relief. Post-conviction relief appeals take place years after direct appeals fail. And that's often oh my gosh, there's new evidence appeal. Or oh my gosh, there's new law that affects everything. We saw a gazillion post-conviction relief appeals, at least being contemplated in Oklahoma after the McGirt decision, which changed that certain laws committed in Indian country by Indians or against Indians, maybe had to be tried in federal court under the major crime statute. Not every single thing, but things under the major crime statute. Complex area of law, but the law can shift. And you might make a direct, again, post-conviction relief appeal on that basis. But post-conviction appeals are dangerous in a sense, because at least in this state, anything you argue on a post-conviction appeal, that's it. That's your appeal. And if you have failed to make some other argument, you don't get to make it later. You are stopped from making that appeal because it's assumed that anything on direct appeal, you can argue everything. Post-conviction appeals, however, if you didn't argue it, you don't get to argue it later, unless, always exceptions within rules, unless it's new evidence. If truly new evidence comes up, you could appeal again and again over the DNA that turned up, over the witness that wasn't. You could do that over and over again.
What to do? I can't wait to see what the grounds for the appeals going to be. And how could you, as his defense attorney, file for ineffective counsel when you were the one that did it?
And yet I've seen it done. I've worked before I studied the law, I kind of assumed that if a court ever found somebody had been ineffective counsel, that there would immediately somehow be career consequences for that person, that their license under the bar would be revoked or whatever, their bar license, I mean to say. And it turns out, no, you could actually be found to have been ineffective counsel, and as long as it's not some violation of ethics or morally blameworthy or whatever, it doesn't necessarily affect your career at all. So, like I say, I've seen an attorney that I've worked for make that argument upon himself, and the court saying, "Nah, you were effective, counselor." You know, and
Don't cut yourself short. We think you did a great job.
Well, maybe not great, but keep in mind, adequate is the standard. Let me tell you why they're not going to do a botched investigation argument. Courts generally only consider the evidence that is in front of them. A broad second guessing of evidence that is out there, courts just aren't going to get into it. You would have to have an actual piece of evidence that would turn up. And that would be the kind of thing that you would argue on for post-conviction relief. These botched investigation arguments, yeah, you tried them on the jury. They didn't work. And I predict they will not try that with an appeal. One argument that they will make, and I looked into this actually after it came up on one of your shows, they'll make a junk science argument. Let's talk about how you take the temperature of a dead body.
Oh, the underarm argument.
Yeah, the underarm argument.
That if that was my paper and I was assigned that, I would call it the underarm argument.
Yeah, I would probably be in the vernacular and call it the armpit argument. But if I wanted to be very academic, I would call it the axial argument, because if you measure under the arm, that's your axial temperature. So I'm reading here from Elgor Mortis, an overview in Science Direct Topics, where it says, in practice, either the temperature is measured rectally or the intrahepatic subhepatic temperature is measured through an abdominal wall stab. Wow. And it says that oral, I think that's the ear, and axillary temperatures cannot be used, because after death, these are not reflective of the body core temperature. So there's your junk science argument right there, that this, you know, if that was evidence, I'm trying to go back and think if they ever did try to use the body temperatures as evidence. It may be nothing more than an ineffective investigation thing, which isn't going to get you anywhere. But if even one witness from their mouth said something about the body temperature, then all of a sudden, oh boy, I've got my junk science argument on appeal.
And all in all, I think we can agree. It looks that Alex is safely tucked away there for a very, very long time, as it sits right now, 2 consecutive life sentences. So if one gets thrown out, you do have a life sentence still pending, and you have a ass load of financial crimes. His dance card is full, my friend.
Wow. Let's talk a moment about his prison dance card before we get all the way to the cumulative argument here, which is kind of like the signal that things are wrapping up. Let's talk about his dance card, what's going to happen to him in prison. First of all, like most states, I'm reading that prisoners will first go to a sort of central facility where they sort them out and they figure out, you know, where they should go after that. So at that point, you're looking at the specific needs and vulnerabilities of that prison. So somebody that needs medical care, maybe they're elderly or whatever, they might go to a prison where that is easily available. Somebody that needs drug addiction, and, you know, got a knock on the antique table there. That's Alex. They might have to go to a different place. He has a particular vulnerability in that he put people in that prison as a prosecutor. His father did I bet there's people in that whole prison system. They're like, that Murdaugh family, they put my grandpappy away. And my grandpappy was innocent. You know, I mean, there's a whole lot of people, and he's a celebrity. So you take a shot at a celebrity and all of a sudden you're famous too. That makes him vulnerable. However, he has some strengths. A person who has legal training in the prison system.
Look at that. Just me's way ahead of you.
Oh, is she now? What's she saying?
He's going to be giving legal advice to the people in there. He's going to trade it for meat sticks.
Oh, not just meat sticks, really all those commissary products. So like in the Shawshank Redemption, that guy wasn't even legally trained, but he was smart and educated enough that he was, you know, trying to help the other prisoners there. A person who is a jailhouse lawyer, we call him a jailhouse lawyer, they have a skill that they can trade for everything, including personal safety. I think it's almost going to be a scrimmage, a battle to be the right-hand protection buddy of Alex Murdaugh. So it's a very complex picture. On the one hand, there could be somebody in that prison that's already plotting how they're going to get him. On the other hand, his legal training and indeed his money, his ability to pretty much get unlimited commissary items, that protects him greatly. Now, if I were in the prison system, here's what I would do. I would find a cellmate for him that is extremely literary and good at expressing themselves, because I tell you what, I want the best tell-all book possible. I want quality. So I'm going to figure out who I'm going to put in that cell with them. Might even have a sort of informal writing contest, like, and I'm being a little bit facetious, but not really. Pictures of him. There's people in that prison, if they could just get a picture of him on a cell phone, tabloids will pay for this stuff.
Yeah, I've heard
Again, this is a feeding frenzy. This is a spectacle. Give the people what they want.
And they say they won't let anything happen to him. He is a commodity in whatever jail he goes to. His legal advice. Now, through the people that you've represented over the years.
Well, I don't directly represent him. I work for an attorney. I got to point that out. Yeah.
Well, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So when you're in the inside, when you're in the big house, what is more valuable? Good toilet paper or a good old can of beefaroni?
Wow. You know, I've had to make plenty of visits to the big house to talk to somebody. The small house mostly is where I go, the jail. I've had to engage in, to a degree, correspondence with prisoners. And I have to tell you a prison toilet paper story. Yeah. So I had this attorney in Washington State, and he had a wife from Russia. And his Russian relatives were always trying to make some deals with him. And somehow he had come into ownership or control of an entire warehouse of Russian toilet paper. And this stuff is not the soft and comfortable stuff we use in the United States. This stuff reminded me more of those baking sheets where you put your cookies, or maybe high quality writing paper that, you know, that it was not soft. Okay. And he's like, you know, what the heck would we ever do with this stuff? And I'm like, wow. And we figured out maybe you could sell it to the prison system, because somebody would be like, first of all, this toilet paper is really cheap. And secondly, these prisoners can't complain. And he was like, well, I don't know if I would ever want to do that to prisoners. Keep in mind, we're just kicking this idea around. And then I pointed out, well, please note, this toilet paper would actually make much better writing paper than regular toilet paper. I bet you this toilet paper would actually be in demand. And so, yeah, there was this whole discussion about what could be done with this low quality toilet paper. And we figured out it was a mixed bag. On the one hand, it was very uncomfortable. On the other hand, oh boy, you could write on it. So yeah, there's my toilet paper in prison story. I wish it had more of a dramatic ending, but really it was just more of a discussion.
That's just about as dramatic as it gets. We have gone from head to tail literally with this.
Well, let's wrap it up with the never actually works cumulative argument. In every single appeal, the word harmless error, every time you're trying to say, oh, my word, there was mistakes that were made at my trial, time and time again, that phrase comes down from the high courts. This was harmless error, harmless error, harmless error. Yeah, the third time you're convinced, right? So you can have an imperfect trial. Hardly any trial is perfect. There's always these things that happen. They're showing the jury a portion of a videotape, and then accidentally there's part of the tape they weren't supposed to see, but somebody quickly steps in front of the TV. I've pointed out times when, if you want to take juries to a crime scene, they may be exposed to things that they, weren't supposed to see. You have no perfect trial. But again and again, on appeal, the court will look at that. They will acknowledge, yeah, that was actually an error. That shouldn't have happened. And then they'll say, but it was harmless error. Harmless error. So in every appeal, you almost always end with the cumulative argument. You want to argue there were these mistakes, and any one of them by itself could be harmless error, but all of them put together cumulatively meant an unfair trial. And that never wins. You make the argument, and it just never wins. But I don't think you'd be competent if you didn't make it. Maybe one day you'll be the guy that wins the glorious cumulative error argument, but not a winning argument. But the argument you make at the very end.
And a lot of people don't win their appeals. A lot of people don't get their convictions overturned. I'm sure Alex probably thinks he will. He probably thinks he's going to win this. Who knows?
Well, I've looked into it, and there's 5 justices on the South Carolina Supreme Court. So if he can successfully buy 3 of them, I'm not making any assumption or allegation that could ever happen. I assume that they are, justices of the highest caliber, but you're going to make your appeal because you're a Murdaugh. You fight. You go down swinging. You use the legal system. You cry out that you're innocent to the universe and hope that you've bamboozled somebody into thinking it's true. So, yeah.
Well, and that's why just, agree to disagree is, my motto. But when people are saying, oh, come on, he's just going to take a plea deal for these financials, I think he's going to see this to the very end. I really do. In a way, he's got nothing else to do. Might as well fight, right?
Really, when you're in prison, time is measured in a different way, as Hannibal Lecter said, but we don't reckon time the same way, do we, Clarice? I mean, I'm just amazed. It always scares me when I have to correspond with a prisoner because I know it's going to turn into this obsessive pen pal thing with lengthy letters that I have no time to read. I mean, one of the first things I have to always say is I don't have time for an extended correspondence, but the lawyer is saying he wants to send you this, that, the other thing, whatever it is. They become obsessed and focused on their appeals because for most prisoners, actually escaping is not possible or even realistic. So your only means of escape is that appeal. And false hope is a dangerous commodity in prison. People, they're shall we say, smoking their own dope. They're thinking, oh, this argument's going to win. I just know. And statistically, it's not. But they live on this false hope that an appeal will get them freedom. That's what you do in prison. You work on your appeal if you're from a certain class of prisoners. You just work on it all day. And and then access to the law library becomes an issue. It's just a whole little world unto itself. The whole world of prison appeals is a world unto itself.
It's almost like a totally separate system. And no one up here on this panel or in this chat saying he's going anywhere, but he's going to go down trying. He's going to go down fighting. That's for sure.
Yeah, and say something about the prison appeals system. There's a great case in Oklahoma about law library access. There's this one law library in a prison, and they basically told the prisoner, no, you can't have that number of copies. You're limited on copies. But the rule of the appeals court was a prisoner had to submit, X number of copies with their appeal. Well, anybody had to. And I was amazed. I read this case, and the Supreme Court, or perhaps it was the Court of Criminal Appeals, don't remember off the top of my head, they were just excoriating, just taking to task that prison library system. But it can be in practice very hard to get access to legal materials because you gotta wait till it's your turn. Yeah, it is so hard for a prisoner to, just in physical fact, reality, pull this off. I mean, I've had a prisoner write back to me and say, that copy of that document I sent you to look at, could you please mail it back to me? Because that, after you've made a copy, could you please send it back to me? Because that is how deprived and desperate they are. There's this particular way of writing an appeal when you don't have access to word processing. You write the letters out, and then you blacken each letter very carefully, very darkly, like you're bolding them, because you want your appeal to be read. And things that are handwritten, sometimes they're not read. And there are people that have the particular skill, a sort of prison calligraphy, of making these very clear, very bold letters to write out these arguments. And I know when I send something to a prisoner, that it's my job to, send something to them, correspond with them, whatever it is, on behalf of who I'm working for. I know that if I send a case into that prison, that thing is going to get passed around. It's going to get looked at. It's going to get talked about. Heck, it might get traded for honey buns. Who knows?
Meat sticks, honey buns, Pop-Tarts, ramen, the whole 9 yards.
There's a whole prison economy, for crying out loud. And commissary, commissary is the key. Well, as we wrap up, I want to throw out this crazy revolutionary idea I have that involves prison commissary. As you probably know, prisoners are not allowed to benefit from the royalties of books they might write. And I want to know why people did things. I want to know what's going on in their minds, and the fact that they just can't get any proceeds. And I think the law should be modified somewhat. I think they should be able to get, shall we say, a de minimis amount of benefit from their writings. And not because I'm liberal, more like I want to know what they're thinking. I want history to know. I want these facts to be recorded. And I've even thought it might be possible, if there's somebody who has bodies you can't find. Is there a way to negotiate a deal and say, hey, how many honey buns for life do you want here to put this family's mind at ease? I just, commissary, there are people that will do crazy things just to get commissary. They will whack another prisoner, knowing very well that somebody is going to reward them. Somebody outside will reward them with commissary. There's this whole economy that we don't pay a lot of attention to. And I don't know. I'm saying you can get a lot with commissary. That's all I'm saying.
But instead, we have the FBI Behavioral Science Unit that studies them on our tax dime. That's where they get their information. They do nothing but study these people day in and day out. It's crazy. Now your garden variety, someone who shot somebody for money or drugs, they're not really into that. But the real sick tickets, oh yeah, they don't have to worry. They are being studied.
Yeah. Well, and this is Alex's world now, and we'll just see how he survives. I will say he is at very high risk of the S word. Clearly, he has a family history of it. Oh my word! He even has what has been alleged to be a previous attempt. He's at high risk for this, and maybe one day people will be saying Murdaugh didn't kill himself, just like they're talking about Epstein. But yeah, he's at high risk.
But then again, I mean, he took the stand. Many people have said his defense team would never have Defense 101. Don't let them talk. They would have never said, this sounds like a great idea. They said, they work for him. That had that had to have been him strong-arming them. I'm paying the bill. I'm the client. You work for me. I'm taking the stand. But
That is, in fact, how it goes. I mean, you try to persuade them. You try to say, look, as your lawyer, and you have to use that persuasive power on your client. I saw just even a couple of weeks ago, I saw one of the lawyers I work for, and she was going into court and she was trying to tell the client, if they ask you this, don't go off on this whole, tangent, whatever it is. And I saw this lawyer come right up to the client, gently take him by the face, look deep in his eyes and saying, listen to me, trust your lawyer. When he comes, just make it yes or no when it's this kind of question. Don't try to explain. We'll come back afterward. We'll clean it up for you with a follow-up question. Listen to your lawyer. It is an art. Client control is an art. And they didn't have it there.
And in this case, it was a lost art and he knows better than that. But I think where I'm going with that is he knows better than that, but he thinks he's smarter than everybody else. I just don't think he's going to give up that easily, but we'll see because he's got a lot of fights. So he better have a big dog. No pun intended.
Yeah, well, Bubba, at the end, we have to, always reference Bubba and hope he's okay. But I got to say, yeah, it's fun doing a show about the possible arguments that they'll make on appeal. And there will be an appeal, of course. But the trials are a lot more fun. We want another trial. We can watch it's not as much fun to read the arguments being made on appeal. It's a lot more interesting to watch a trial. Heck, I would find it more interesting just to read about what he's doing in prison than to even read his arguments on appeal.
Oh, could you imagine being his cellmate? Good Lord.
Are you kidding? I'd have a book deal within a week.
Wow. Talking their ear off.
Yeah.
All about him. John, another great show. I love going back and forth with you. Everybody loves having you up here. And
it may be a while though, like we talked about backstage. It may be a while because I got to bill this time out at a certain hourly rate. And we'll come back when we've got something good to talk about in the Alana Rafffield case.
Absolutely, because how rude am I? Now, I talked about it yesterday before you came up, but I did not mention it today. I think I was saving it for the end. The way that we know John around here is through the Alana Rafffield case. Super, super important case. A lot going on there. It's not a mainstream media case at all, but not everything that we do on this channel is something that everyone has heard of. So if you have a second or an hour and a half, go check out one of the shows about Alana Rafffield because a lot is unfolding in that case. And in a couple of weeks, we will be talking about it. We're going to have John back on, Alana's parents. But for now, I bid you farewell.
Farewell to you as well, ma'am. Be safe. Have a good one.
All right. Thank you, John. Let's have a big round of applause for John for taking his time and coming up and talking back and forth with us about, Firecrotch's appeal. He had a lot of great points, and I absolutely loved it and love having all of you here. And if I do not see you over in Discord this afternoon, or if I don't see you in one of the Facebook groups, then I'm going to see you back here tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Thank you, mods. Thank you to everybody. Don't forget to check out the members tab. March Madness, March is for members. See you guys back here tomorrow. You have a great rest of your day.